Sometimes the world's greatest riches are hidden in the most unlikely places, waiting for someone pure of heart to find them. Sofia was only 14 when she discovered that orphans aren't always abandoned by fate. Sometimes, they're chosen for something extraordinary. In a world where injustice seems to prevail, where children grow up without families and dream of a home, a mysterious discovery was about to prove that hope is never in vain. On that ordinary autumn day in Albany, New York, Sofia never imagined her life would change forever. As she walked through the forbidden forest behind St. Mary's Orphanage, escaping once again from the loneliness that consumed her, she didn't know she was just steps away from discovering the truth about who she really was. The metallic glint between the trees wasn't just an abandoned car. It was the key to a family mystery someone had desperately tried to hide. Because sometimes, my friend, the most powerful people in the world make the fatal mistake of underestimating an orphaned child with a heart full of courage. Sofia was about to discover that her real family abandoned her not by choice, but by a tragedy that hid billion-dollar secrets. And when a girl with nothing discovers she actually has everything, the world will never be the same. Sofia woke every morning at 6 in the morning to the same deafening toll of the bell at St. Mary's Orphanage in Albany. 8 years in that place had taught her that dreams were dangerous luxuries, but even so, she couldn't stop imagining what it would be like to have a mother who combed her brown hair every morning. The peeling walls and the smell of cheap disinfectant were already a part of her, but Sofia still looked out the dorm window and whispered softly, "Today could be the day someone comes for me." She knew that at 14, her chances were slim to none, but hope persisted in shining in the depths of her green eyes. The orphanage housed 47 children, but Sofia always felt as if she were alone in the world. While the other girls complained about the tasteless food and the donated clothes that never fit properly, Sofia found small miracles in everyday life. She helped Sister Margaret in the kitchen without being asked, comforted the younger children when they cried from missing parents they barely remembered, and always shared her dessert with those who were sad. "You have a heart of gold, Sofia," Sister Margaret would say. "One day it will take you far from here." But far away seemed an impossible concept when you never even had your own address. Sofia treasured these words, repeating them in the darkest moments, when loneliness was so overwhelming she could barely breathe. The routine was always the same. Breakfast at 7, public school classes until 3, chores at the orphanage until 6, dinner and bed at 9. Sofia had become adept at finding moments of escape within this prison of schedules. She read books borrowed from the library until late, wrote imaginary letters to parents she'd never met, and daydreamed during math class. Her teachers often commented that she was too smart for her situation, but intelligence didn't pay bills or guarantee a family. That October morning, as she swept leaves from the playground, Sofia had no idea her life was about to take a completely different turn. The cold wind that swayed the trees around the orphanage carried secrets that would soon reach her. Mornings at St. Mary's began with a frantic rush of 47 children trying to use only 4 functioning bathrooms. Sofia learned to wake up 15 minutes early to avoid the lines and have a few moments of peace before the daily chaos began. She brushed her teeth with a toothbrush that had seen better days and stared in the cracked mirror, wondering if her biological parents had the same green eyes as her. Breakfast was always watery oatmeal and a slice of bread that looked more like cardboard, but Sofia ate it all without complaint. She knew many children in the city didn't even have that. While the other girls in her dorm grumbled about the food, Sofia silently gave thanks for having a roof over her head and a plate on the table. Thomas Jefferson Public School was a 20-minute walk from the orphanage, and Sofia made the trek every day in holey shoes that left her feet wet when it rained. She carried her books in a donated backpack with the name Jennifer written on it in permanent marker. But Sofia didn't mind. Books were portals to worlds where orphans became princesses, and where happy families truly existed. At school, she excelled in every subject, especially in writing, where she could create stories about perfect families and happy endings. Her teachers always praised her, but Sofia knew that good grades didn't change the fact that she would return to the orphanage at the end of the day. During recess, she preferred to sit in the library reading rather than play in the playground. It was easier than explaining why no one ever came to pick her up from school performances. Afternoons at the orphanage were devoted to the household chores that kept the place running on a shoestring budget. Sofia washed dishes, folded donated clothes, and helped the younger children with their homework, always with a smile on her face that hid the deep sadness she carried within her. She had become the unofficial big sister to at least 10 younger children, comforting their nightmares and making up bedtime stories. "One day, you'll have real families," she would whisper to them, even though she knew statistically that was unlikely for most. When bedtime finally came, Sofia would lie in her narrow bed and gaze out the window, counting stars and making wishes that never seemed to come true. That October night, she didn't know that the universe was finally ready to answer her prayers in a way she could never have imagined. The forest behind St. Mary's orphanage was officially off limits to all children, but Sofia discovered 2 years ago that rules sometimes needed to be broken when the soul was suffocating. Sister Margaret always warned of the dangers of the dense forest: wild animals, hidden holes, the possibility of getting lost forever. But for Sofia, the greatest danger was being trapped within those peeling walls for another day. She knew every secret trail, every tree that served as a hiding place, every stone that marked the way home. That forest had become her private sanctuary, the one place in the world where she could cry without anyone asking what was wrong, when loneliness became too much. When she saw other children being adopted while she remained invisible, Sofia ran to the trees as if running to a mother's arms. That October afternoon, after another day of watching visiting couples walk right past her in the common room, Sofia felt her chest tighten in a familiar way. She waited until Sister Margaret was distracted with the younger children and slipped through the back door, her feet automatically knowing the way to her favorite clearing. Autumn had painted the leaves gold and red, creating a crunchy carpet beneath her feet that muffled the sound of her footsteps. Sofia walked slowly, breathing in the fresh air, and feeling for the first time that day that she could think clearly. She had a secret ritual. Whenever she arrived at the clearing, she closed her eyes and made 3 wishes: the first to find her family, the second to make the other children at the orphanage happy, and the third she kept as a surprise for the universe to decide. But that afternoon, something was different in the forest Sofia knew like the back of her hand. There were fresh footprints in the mud, tire tracks she'd never seen before, and a strange scent in the air she couldn't quite place. Sofia felt butterflies in her stomach, not from fear, but from pure curiosity. She followed the tire tracks like a detective following clues, her heart beating faster with each step. The trees seemed to whisper secrets she couldn't yet understand, and the wind carried a promise of change that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. Sofia didn't know it, but she was walking toward the moment that would divide her life into before and after. The forbidden forest was about to reveal that sometimes the best discoveries happen exactly where we shouldn't be looking. Sofia followed the tire tracks for nearly 15 minutes, entering a part of the forest she had never explored before. The trees were denser here, forming a sort of green tunnel that filtered the sunlight into golden rays that danced across the leaf-covered ground. She stopped suddenly when something caught her eye, a metallic glint flickering between the branches, as if someone had hidden a patch of sunlight among the trees. Sofia blinked several times, thinking her eyes were playing tricks on her, but the glow remained, stubborn and mysterious. Her heart began to beat faster, not from fear, but from that excitement you feel when you're about to discover something important. She approached slowly, treading carefully so as not to make a sound, as if she were an explorer discovering a lost treasure. As she approached, Sofia could make out that the glow was coming from something large, something that definitely didn't belong in this wild forest. She carefully pushed aside some low-hanging branches, trying to get a better look at whatever it was. The object seemed to be partially hidden behind a stand of ancient oak trees, as if someone had deliberately tried to camouflage it. Sofia felt a shiver run down her spine. It wasn't fear. It was pure adrenaline coursing through her veins. She'd read enough books to know that moments like these were turning points, those magical instants where ordinary life transforms into extraordinary adventure. Her feet seemed to have a mind of their own, carrying her ever closer to the mystery shimmering between the trees. Sofia's curiosity had always been stronger than any instinct for self-preservation. It was what kept her reading late into the night, what drove her to ask questions that made adults uncomfortable, what brought her to that forbidden forest in the first place. She took a deep breath, smelling damp earth and decaying leaves, and took a few more steps toward the mysterious glow. The silence of the forest was almost deafening, broken only by the sound of dry leaves crunching beneath her feet and the sound of her own heart beating like a drum in her chest. Sofia had no idea she was just feet away from discovering something that would change not only her life, but also her understanding of who she truly was. The metallic glow continued to flicker between the trees, as if beckoning her, calling her closer to a destiny that had been waiting years to be discovered. When Sofia finally got a full view of what was hidden among the trees, she had to hold on to the bark of an oak tree to keep from falling over in surprise. There, half swallowed by the vegetation and covered in a thick layer of golden leaves and dry twigs, was the most beautiful car she had ever seen. A black Bentley Continental GT that, even abandoned, radiated elegance and power. The dark paint gleamed in spots where the leaves hadn't completely covered it, and Sofia could see that this wasn't just any car. It was the kind of vehicle she'd only seen in movies, driven by wealthy people who lived in mansions with gardens bigger than the entire orphanage. She stood there for a few minutes, just watching, trying to process how on earth a car like that had stopped in the middle of the forest. Her legs trembled a little, not from fear, but from sheer disbelief at this impossible discovery. Sofia walked around the Bentley like a wild animal she didn't want to scare, taking in every detail with wide-eyed admiration. The car had clearly been there for a while. Moss was growing on some parts of the body, and small branches had entwined the side mirrors as if the forest were trying to reclaim this luxurious machine back from the wild. But even so, Sofia could see the majestic beauty beneath all that natural camouflage. The wheels were huge and shiny, the kind she imagined cost more money than the orphanage received in an entire year. She ran her hand lightly over the hood, feeling the cool metal beneath her fingers, and for a moment allowed herself to dream that this car was hers, that she had a life where cars like this were normal. Sofia's mind raced with 1,000 questions at once. Who owned that Bentley? Why was it abandoned in the middle of the forest? How long had it been there? And most importantly, why hadn't anyone come looking for it? Sofia knew cars like that weren't easily forgotten. They represented fortune, status, power. Someone very wealthy had left that treasure behind, and she couldn't think of a good enough reason. She circled the vehicle again, noting that there were no signs of an accident or serious damage. The car appeared to have simply been parked there and abandoned, as if its owner had gone for a walk and never returned. Sofia felt butterflies in her stomach, a mixture of excitement and apprehension that made her want to run back to the orphanage and simultaneously investigate every inch of this mystery on wheels. Sofia took a deep breath and decided she'd come too far to give up now. She needed to know more about this mysterious Bentley that seemed to have fallen from the sky into the middle of her secret forest. She approached the driver's door, her heart pounding so hard she was sure the birds in the trees could hear it. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled on the chrome doorknob, expecting it to be locked like any normal car would be, but to her utter surprise, the door opened with a soft, silent click. Sofia's eyes widened. Who leaves a Bentley unlocked in the middle of a forest? She hesitated for a second, looking around to make sure she was alone, before opening the door fully and finding herself in an interior that looked like something out of a Hollywood movie. The scent that wafted from the car when Sofia opened the door was a mix of genuine leather, polished wood, and an expensive perfume she couldn't quite place, but it definitely didn't smell like anything at St. Mary's Orphanage. The seats were a beige leather so soft it felt like silk, and the dashboard was a work of art in dark wood with metal accents that gleamed even in the filtered forest light. Sofia had never seen so much luxury concentrated in such a small space. Every button, every detail seemed designed to impress. She ran her fingers lightly over the steering wheel, imagining what it would be like to drive such a machine, feeling for a moment like a princess in her golden carriage. The silence inside the car was different from the silence of the forest. It was an expensive, secluded silence that made Sofia feel protected from the outside world. After a few minutes of admiring the luxurious interior, Sofia began to notice details her initial excitement had overlooked. There was a light layer of dust over everything, confirming the car had been there for a while, but there were no signs of vandalism or deterioration. It was as if someone had simply parked and left, planning to return in a few minutes. In the passenger seat, she noticed some dry leaves that had blown in through the half-open window, and on the floor were ancient, dried-on mud footprints. Sofia felt a chill. Those footprints meant someone had been here before her, someone who knew this secret place. She looked around the interior once more, searching for clues as to who might own this abandoned treasure, when her eyes fixed on something that made her heart skip a beat. There was a leather briefcase on the back seat that she hadn't noticed before. Sofia turned slowly in the driver's seat, her eyes fixed on the brown leather briefcase resting on the back seat as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The briefcase was elegant and expensive, the kind carried by important executives in movies, with gold clasps that gleamed even in the dim light filtering through the Bentley's fogged windows. She could feel her heart racing again. First an abandoned luxury car, now a mysterious briefcase that clearly contained something important. Sofia knew she was crossing an invisible line, that going through someone else's belongings was wrong, but the curiosity that always got her into trouble was screaming louder than her conscience. She reached out slowly, as if the briefcase would explode if she moved too fast, and carefully pulled it into the front seat. The case was heavier than Sofia expected, and the leather was so soft and well cared for that she could feel its quality just by touching it. There were initials engraved in gold near the clasp, RHM, that meant nothing to her, but were obviously important to someone. Sofia ran her fingers over the gold letters, wondering what kind of person had initials engraved on expensive leather cases and drove Bentleys that cost more than a house. She shook the case gently and heard the sound of papers shifting inside, along with something heavier she couldn't identify. The sound made her stomach churn. There were definitely important things inside, things someone wouldn't leave behind unless something very serious had happened. Sofia stood there for a few minutes, just holding the suitcase and trying to decide what to do. Part of her knew she should put everything back and run out of there, go back to the orphanage, and pretend she'd never seen that mysterious Bentley. But the bigger part of her, the part that always made her different from other children, was burning with curiosity to know what was inside that elegant suitcase. She tried to open the golden clasps, but they were locked, which only increased her determination to discover the secrets hidden within. Sofia looked around the car's interior, searching for a key or some clue to how to open the suitcase, when she noticed that the glove compartment also seemed to hold something interesting. She was about to discover that some curiosities change our lives forever, and that sometimes the greatest treasures are locked away, waiting for the right person to find them. Sofia carefully placed the suitcase on the passenger seat and turned her attention to the glove compartment, which had a small gold lock that perfectly matched the suitcase's clasps. She pulled the small lever, but as expected, it was locked too. Whoever owned that Bentley definitely didn't want strangers rummaging through their things. Sofia sighed, feeling a mixture of frustration and determination building in her chest. She'd come too far to give up now, and something deep inside her was screaming that these locked objects held answers to questions she didn't even know she should ask. She ran her fingers over the small lock, noticing it was made of the same expensive gold material that decorated the rest of the car's interior. Definitely not the kind of lock you opened with a hairpin like in the movies. Sofia began methodically searching the entire interior of the car, opening every compartment she could find, checking under the seats, inside the armrests, even on the sides of the doors. She knew that wealthy, organized people like the owner of that Bentley usually had systems, specific places to store important keys. Her fingers explored every inch of the luxurious dashboard, searching for secret compartments or hidden drawers that might contain the key she needed. The soft leather of the seats hid a few side pockets, which she carefully checked, but found only a few loose change and a silk scarf that smelled of the same expensive perfume that permeated the entire interior of the car. Sofia was beginning to feel like a real detective, following clues and searching for evidence that would lead her to the truth. After nearly 20 minutes of searching, Sofia was starting to get discouraged when she decided to check the door compartments again. She opened the small pocket in the driver's door and found only a few candy wrappers and a fancy business card. But when she opened the passenger door compartment, her fingers touched something different. There was a small bulge at the bottom of the compartment, as if something were glued there. Sofia ran her nails around the bulge and managed to peel off what appeared to be a small golden key taped to the bottom of the compartment. Her heart raced. That had to be the key she was looking for. She held the small golden key up to the light, admiring how it gleamed, and felt a surge of pure excitement coursing through her veins. Sofia didn't know it, but she was holding in her hands the key that would unlock not just a glove compartment, but the entire truth about her own identity. Sofia held the small golden key between her fingers, feeling the cold, heavy metal that confirmed its expensive quality. It was definitely no ordinary glove box key. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it echoing inside the silent Bentley, and her hands trembled slightly with pure adrenaline. She looked at the glove box lock, then at the key, and back again, as if trying to summon the courage to take the next step. Sofia knew that once she opened that compartment, there would be no going back. She would officially be invading someone's privacy, prying into secrets clearly not meant for their eyes. But the curiosity that had always defined her was screaming louder than any sense of morality, and she felt she had come too far to back down now. With her hands still shaking, Sofia carefully inserted the golden key into the glove compartment lock, silently praying it was the right one. The metal slid perfectly into the lock with a soft click that was music to her ears. It was the right key. She turned it slowly, feeling the resistance of the lock give way, and heard the satisfying sound of the mechanism opening. Sofia took a deep breath, mentally preparing herself for whatever she found inside, and pulled the small lever on the glove compartment. The compartment opened with a smooth, silent movement, revealing a black velvet-lined interior that looked even more luxurious than the rest of the car. She could feel her pulse quickening as her eyes adjusted to the dim light of the compartment, trying to make out what she had hidden in that particular safe. The glove compartment wasn't filled with random things as she'd expected. Instead, there were just a few carefully arranged items that obviously held great importance to the car's owner. Sofia could see a few sealed envelopes, what appeared to be a small jewelry box, and something that made her heart skip a beat. A second key, larger and more ornate than the first, with a small gold pendant dangling from it. She picked up the larger key carefully, noticing that the pendant was engraved with the same initials she'd seen on the briefcase, RHM, and felt a shiver run down her spine. Sofia didn't need to be a genius to realize that this second key likely opened the leather briefcase waiting on the passenger seat. She held both keys in her hands, feeling the weight of the moment, knowing she was about to uncover secrets someone had tried so desperately to hide. Sofia grabbed the leather briefcase from the passenger seat with hands that trembled with anticipation, placing it carefully on her lap while holding the ornate key as if it were a magical talisman. She inserted the key into the briefcase's lock, and this time there was no hesitation. She turned it quickly, hearing the satisfying click of the latches opening in sequence. Sofia's heart was pounding so hard she was sure anyone miles away could hear it, and she took a deep breath before lifting the briefcase lid. What she saw inside stopped her world completely. It wasn't just random papers as she'd imagined, but documents organized in elegant folders, old photographs, and a letter with her own name written in elegant calligraphy on the envelope. Sofia blinked several times, thinking her eyes were playing tricks on her, but there it was. To Sofia, Elena Martinez, written in gold ink. With her hands shaking uncontrollably, Sofia picked up the envelope bearing her name, feeling the expensive, heavy paper between her fingers. She had never seen her middle letter written anywhere. In the orphanage, she was simply Sofia, with no last name, no history, no identity beyond being just another abandoned child. But there was her full name, written by someone who clearly knew her better than she knew herself. Sofia opened the envelope carefully, as if it would disintegrate if she moved too quickly, and withdrew a letter written on expensive letterhead. The first words made her legs go weak. "My dear Sofia, if you are reading this letter, it means you have finally found what I have hidden from you. You are not who you think you are, my daughter. You are the heiress to one of the greatest fortunes in America. And I have spent the last years of my life protecting that truth until you were old enough to understand it." Sofia had to stop reading for a moment, leaning against the steering wheel of the Bentley as she tried to process the impossible words she had just read. Heiress? Fortune? This had to be some kind of mistake, some cruel joke of fate. She was just an orphan with no name, no family, no nothing. How could she be heir to anything? But when she looked again at the other documents in the briefcase, she saw certificates, contracts, photographs of elegant people she didn't recognize, and an official will with gold seals that looked too real to be a fake. Sofia picked up one of the photographs and almost dropped it when she saw a beautiful woman holding a baby with the exact same green eyes she saw in the mirror every day. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "Sofia, 6 months old, our little princess." Sofia felt the world spin around her as the impossible truth began to form in her mind. She was not an abandoned orphan. She was someone who had been hidden, protected, and now finally found. Sofia continued reading the letter with hands that trembled so badly she could barely hold the paper, each word revealing a truth more impossible than the last. "Your real name is Sofia Elena Martinez Harrison, and you are the sole heir to Harrison Industries, an empire worth over $3 billion. Your parents, Robert and Elena Harrison, died in a car accident when you were just 6 years old, but it was no ordinary accident. Someone wanted you dead to take control of the company." Sofia had to stop reading again, resting her head in her hands as she tried to process information that seemed like something out of a movie. $3 billion? She who barely had $10 stashed in a tin can under her bed at the orphanage. The letter continued, "I am Richard Martinez, your maternal grandfather, and I have spent the last 8 years pretending to be dead to protect you and investigate who killed my daughter and son-in-law." Tears began to stream down Sofia's face as she read about a grandfather she never knew existed, a man who had sacrificed his own life to keep her safe. "I placed you in St. Mary's orphanage under a false identity, secretly paying for your upkeep through anonymous donations. I know it must have been difficult growing up thinking you were alone in the world, but it was the only way to keep you alive until I could gather enough evidence against the people who destroyed our family." Sofia sobbed, realizing she had never truly been alone, that someone had been watching over her from afar, protecting her from dangers she hadn't even known existed. The letter explained that the orphanage had been chosen specifically because Sister Margaret was an old family friend who agreed to care for Sofia without questions, keeping the secret, even though she didn't know the full truth. "If you're reading this, it means something happened to me, and I couldn't come pick you up in person as planned. Inside this briefcase are all the documents that prove your true identity, including your original birth certificate, your parents' will, and evidence about who actually caused the accident." Sofia looked at the other documents in the briefcase with new eyes, realizing that each piece represented a piece of the puzzle of her real life. The letter ended with words that made her heart break and rebuild at the same time. "You were never abandoned, my dear Sofia. You were loved, protected, and waited for every day of your life. Now it's time for you to reclaim your place in the world and seek justice for our family. Seek out attorney Marcus Thompson in New York. He has instructions to help you when that day comes. With all my love, your grandfather Richard." Sofia held the letter to her chest, crying for all the years of loneliness that now made sense, for a grandfather she never knew but who loved her enough to sacrifice everything for her. Sofia took the official documents from her briefcase with hands that still trembled, but now from pure emotion rather than nervousness. The first document she examined was her original birth certificate, and seeing her full name, Sofia Elena Martinez Harrison, printed on official paper made everything feel real in a way the letter alone couldn't. She had been born at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, the daughter of Robert James Harrison and Elena Martinez Harrison, and for the first time in her life, she knew exactly who her parents were. Tears streamed down her face as she ran her fingers over the names, finally having faces to put to the people who brought her into this world. The document showed her that she wasn't just an orphan with no history. She had a lineage, a family, a place in the world that had always been rightfully hers. Sofia felt as if a part of her that had always been missing had finally fallen into place. The next document was even more shocking, a detailed police report on the accident that killed her parents, but with handwritten notes in the margins that told a very different story from the official version. According to her grandfather's notes, the accident had occurred on a secluded road in upstate New York, but the car's brakes had been sabotaged, and there was evidence that another vehicle had forced her parents' car off the road. Sofia read with growing horror about how the police investigation had been quickly closed, classified as an accident due to mechanical failure, but her grandfather had hired private investigators who uncovered the truth. The names of the suspects were circled in red, executives from Heiress Industries who had much to gain from her parents' deaths and now controlled the company that should have been hers. Sofia also found copies of financial documents that showed how Heiress Industries had grown exponentially in the 8 years since her parents' deaths, transforming from a $2 billion company into a $3 billion empire. But what shocked her most was discovering that legally, she was still the majority owner of the company. Her parents' will was clear and unquestionable, naming her the sole heir to everything. The executives who had taken control were technically only managing her assets until she turned 18, but they clearly had other plans. Sofia realized she wasn't just rich, she was one of the richest people in America, owner of a company that employed thousands of people and had influence in dozens of countries. The girl who grew up wearing donated clothes and eating watery oatmeal was actually a billionaire heiress who had been robbed of her own life. Among the documents, Sofia found a smaller envelope marked "Family Photos" in elegant handwriting, and when she opened it, her heart nearly stopped beating. The first photograph showed a beautiful couple in formal wear, clearly at some elegant event, and Sofia immediately recognized the woman's green eyes. They were exactly like her own. The woman was stunning, with wavy brown hair like Sofia's, and a warm smile that radiated kindness and intelligence. The man beside her was tall and elegant, with a confident smile and gentle eyes that revealed the same kind of determination Sofia had always felt burning within her. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "Robert and Elena Harrison, Charity Ball 2015. Sofia held the photograph to her chest, finally seeing the faces of the people who brought her into this world. People who clearly loved her even before she was born. The second photograph made Sofia sob with emotion. It was her as a baby in her mother's arms, while her father smiled proudly beside them. They were in a luxurious nursery decorated in shades of pink and gold, and Sofia could see the pure love in her parents' eyes as they looked at her. Her mother wore an elegant yet simple dress, and there was something in the way she held Sofia that spoke of infinite tenderness. Her father had one hand protectively on his wife's shoulder, and the other gently touching Sofia's head, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. On the back was written, "Our little princess, Sofia, 3 months old, May 2010. Sofia realized that her parents weren't just wealthy. They were people who clearly loved each other, and her deeply. And this made the pain of loss blend with an immense gratitude for having been wanted and cherished. The third photograph showed a larger family, her parents with an older man whom Sofia immediately recognized as her grandfather Richard, the man who wrote the letter. They were in a large mansion with immaculate gardens in the background, and Sofia was in her grandfather's arms, who smiled at her with an expression of pure grandfatherly love. There were other people in the photo too, aunts, uncles, cousins Sofia never knew existed, an entire family that should have been part of her life. Everyone looked happy and close, the kind of close-knit family Sofia had always dreamed of having. On the back was written, "Family Reunion, Harrison House, July 2010. Sofia realized that she wasn't just a billionaire heiress. She had an entire family taken from her, people who should have been there for every birthday, every Christmas, every important moment of her life. The loneliness she carried for 8 years wasn't just due to the lack of parents, but the loss of an entire network of love and support that should have been hers from the start. Sofia picked up a thick folder marked Legal Documents, Confidential, and when she opened it, she found her parents' official will, a multi-page document with gold seals and signatures that looked very official and important. She read each line carefully, and even with her limited experience in legal jargon, she could understand the main message. "We, Robert James Harrison and Elena Martinez Harrison, in good standing, do hereby leave all of our assets, property, stock in Harrison Industries, and other possessions to our only child, Sofia Elena Martinez Harrison." The document was dated just 2 months before the accident, as if her parents had sensed something might happen. Sofia felt a chill run down her spine. Her parents had been careful enough to ensure she inherited everything, but not careful enough to protect themselves from the killers who wanted just that. The will specified that Sofia would inherit not only Harrison Industries, but also 3 mansions, one in New York, one in Los Angeles, and one in Miami, a collection of classic cars, bank accounts in several countries, and investments in dozens of other companies. Sofia had to read it twice to make sure she understood correctly. She wasn't just rich, she was absurdly rich, possessing a wealth most people couldn't even imagine. There was also a special clause naming Richard Martinez, her grandfather, as her legal guardian until she turned 18, with specific instructions for him to manage the assets, with Sofia's best interests in mind, always prioritizing her safety and well-being above profits. Sofia realized that her grandfather wasn't just protecting her out of love. He was fulfilling a legal responsibility her own parents had entrusted to him. Along with the will were documents showing that Harrison Industries had been run by a temporary executive board since her parents' death, but that legally all major decisions required the approval of the legal guardian, her grandfather Richard. Sofia also found correspondence between lawyers that revealed a fierce legal battle taking place behind the scenes, with company executives trying to question the validity of the will and the whereabouts of the legal guardian. There were threatening letters, offers to buy the company, and even suggestions that Sofia had died in the same accident as her parents. Sofia realized it wasn't just a matter of money. Powerful people had built their lives and fortunes on the lie that she was dead, and they would do anything to keep that lie alive. She clutched the documents tightly, finally understanding why her grandfather had to pretend to be dead and why she had to grow up in hiding. Her very existence was a threat to people who would not hesitate to kill her to protect their secrets. Sofia found a detailed file on Harrison Industries that made her head spin with the magnitude of what she was discovering about her inheritance. The company her parents built wasn't just any company. It was a multinational conglomerate with subsidiaries in technology, real estate, renewable energy, and even entertainment. Financial reports showed annual revenues of over $800 million, with profits growing steadily year after year. Sofia stared at the numbers in disbelief. She, who had always had to save every penny at the orphanage, who wore donated clothes and ate leftovers, was actually the owner of a money-making machine that generated more in a day than the orphanage received in an entire year. The irony was so absurd that she almost laughed, if the whole situation weren't so tragic. The documents showed that Heiress Industries employed more than 15,000 people in offices spread across New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, and even London and Tokyo. Sofia saw photographs of the company's buildings, sleek glass towers with the name Heiress shining in gold letters, luxurious offices that looked like something out of a movie about powerful executives. There were also reports on the company's social projects, including scholarship programs, children's hospitals funded by Heiress Industries, and even orphanages that received regular donations. Sofia felt a surge of pride mixed with sadness. Her parents had built not only a profitable company, but a force for good in the world. And she had grown up in an orphanage while her own company donated millions to similar institutions. What impressed Sofia most was discovering that Heiress Industries had an entire division dedicated to educational technology, developing programs and equipment for schools in underserved communities. There were reports of tablets donated to underprivileged children, computer labs built in public schools, and mentoring programs for vulnerable youth. Sofia realized that her parents weren't just wealthy business people. They were visionaries who used their wealth to create opportunities for others. She looked around the luxurious interior of the Bentley, then at the documents proving she owned an empire, and finally understood the responsibility she was inheriting. It wasn't just about money or power. It was about continuing her parents' legacy, about using her privileged position to make a difference in the world. Sofia felt a determination growing within her, a certainty that no matter how dangerous it was to claim her inheritance, she had a moral obligation to honor her parents' memory and protect the empire they built with so much love and care. Sofia found an official document that helped her better understand the man who had sacrificed everything to protect her. Richard Martinez wasn't just her grandfather. He had been one of New York's most respected lawyers, a senior partner at one of the city's most prestigious firms, specializing in corporate law and family inheritance. Before faking his own death, he had a considerable personal fortune, an impeccable reputation, and an active social life among Manhattan's elite. Sofia read about the awards he had won, the high-profile cases he had won, the charities he had presided over. He had given up all of this, his career, his identity, his entire life, to investigate his daughter's murder and protect his granddaughter. Sofia felt a surge of love and gratitude for a man she had never met personally, but who had been the true hero of her story. The document also revealed that Richard had been extremely meticulous in planning Sofia's protection. He had created a complex network of false identities, secret bank accounts, and trusted contacts that helped him keep Sofia safe while he investigated her parents' killers. There were correspondences with private investigators, retired detectives, and even former FBI agents he had hired to uncover the truth about the accident. Sofia realized that her grandfather wasn't just in hiding. He was conducting a sophisticated criminal investigation, using his legal expertise and financial resources to build a solid case against the people who destroyed his family. He had turned his grief into a mission, his loss into a crusade for justice. But what touched Sofia's heart most was finding personal letters her grandfather had written to her over the years. Letters he never sent, but carefully kept in his suitcase. There were dozens of letters, one for each birthday she spent at the orphanage, each Christmas she spent alone, each important milestone in her life he witnessed from afar. "My dear Sofia, today you turned 10, and I so wish I could be there to sing happy birthday with you." One letter read, "I know you must be wondering why you're alone, but know that you've never really been alone. I think of you every day." Sofia cried as she read each letter, realizing that while she felt abandoned and forgotten, there was a man who loved her desperately and was sacrificing his own happiness to ensure she had a future. Richard Martinez wasn't just her legal guardian. He was her guardian angel, her silent protector, the grandfather she always wanted but never knew existed. Sofia found a series of documents explaining why the Bentley was abandoned in the woods and why her grandfather hadn't been able to come and get her in person as planned. Richard's last notes were dated just 3 weeks ago, and they showed that he had finally gathered enough evidence to expose his parents' killers and was preparing to come out of hiding. He had scheduled a meeting with the New York District Attorney to hand over all the evidence, and afterward he would come and get Sofia to reveal his true identity. But something had gone wrong. The notes stopped abruptly, and there were signs that Richard had discovered his location had been compromised. Sofia read with growing apprehension about how her grandfather realized he was being followed, that his communications were being intercepted, and that he needed to disappear again before it was too late. Richard's final diary entry was eerily prophetic. "They've discovered where I am. I have only a few hours before they arrive here. I'm hiding all the evidence in the place I agreed with Sofia. If anything happens to me, she'll know where to look when she's ready. The Bentley is loaded with everything she needs to claim her inheritance and bring justice for our family. If I can't get her myself, at least she'll have the tools to uncover the truth herself." Sofia realized that her grandfather had carefully planned even his own capture or death, ensuring that she would have access to all the necessary information. He had driven the Bentley into the woods behind the orphanage, hidden the car among the trees, and had likely been captured while trying to return to his hiding place. Sofia also found a detailed map of the area surrounding the orphanage, with the exact location where the Bentley was hidden marked with a red X. There were specific instructions on how to find the car, how to open the suitcase, and what to do with the information once she discovered it. Richard had even calculated that Sofia would discover the car around age 14, based on her pattern of exploring the forbidden forest when she was sad or frustrated. "My granddaughter has always been curious and brave," he wrote, "and I know that when she is ready to discover the truth, she will find her way here." Sofia realized that even though he was missing, possibly dead, her grandfather was still watching over her, still guiding her steps toward her destiny. The abandoned Bentley wasn't just a hiding place. It was a message of love, a final gift from a grandfather who never stopped fighting for her, even when it cost him his own life. At the bottom of the briefcase, Sofia found a sealed, heavy envelope marked "Urgent Instructions, open only in case of emergency," and when she opened it, she found an elegant business card along with a detailed letter. The card was from Marcus Thompson, a senior partner at Thompson Williams & Associates, located on Park Avenue in New York City, and on the back was a handwritten message. "Sofia, when you find this message, come see me immediately. I have instructions from your grandfather, and everything is prepared for this moment. Do not trust anyone else until we speak in person. MT." Sofia held the card with trembling hands, realizing she finally had a concrete address, someone who could help her fully understand her situation and claim her inheritance. The Park Avenue address sounded impressive and intimidating at the same time. She had never been to New York, had never left Albany in fact. The letter accompanying the card explained that Marcus Thompson had been her grandfather Richard's best friend and business partner for over 20 years, and that he was the only person in the world who knew the full truth about Sofia's situation. "Marcus has copies of all important documents, access to the bank accounts your grandfather set up for you, and most importantly, he has a detailed plan to safely expose your parents' killers," the letter read. Sofia read that Marcus had been waiting for this moment for 8 years, keeping himself prepared for the day she would discover his true identity. He had offices in one of the most secure buildings in Manhattan, with state-of-the-art security systems and a team of lawyers specializing in high-stakes cases like hers. Sofia also found specific instructions on how to get to New York and how to contact Marcus Thompson without arousing suspicion. There was cash hidden in a secret compartment of the briefcase, over $5,000 in $100 bills, along with a prepaid cell phone and emergency contact numbers. "Once you decide to take this step, Sofia, there is no turning back," the letter warned. "Once you seek out Marcus and reveal your identity, the people who killed your parents will know you're alive and will do everything they can to silence you permanently. But you won't be alone. Marcus has resources, protection, and a plan that he and your grandfather have developed over the years." Sofia looked at the business card again, realizing that this small piece of paper represented the bridge between her life as an anonymous orphan and her true identity as a billionaire heiress. It was frightening and exciting at the same time, and she knew that once she took this step, her life would change forever in ways she couldn't even imagine. As Sofia carefully organized all the documents back into her briefcase, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold. The distant sound of twigs snapping and leaves crunching, as if someone were walking through the forest toward the Bentley. She froze, holding her breath and straining to listen, and the sound became clearer. It was definitely human footsteps, and more than one person. Sofia felt panic rise in her throat as she realized someone had discovered the car's location, and from the cautious way they were approaching, they weren't people with good intentions. She quickly closed the briefcase, pocketed the key, and ducked into the driver's seat, trying to hide while her heart pounded so hard she was sure anyone could hear it. The voices grew closer, and Sofia could make out two men talking in low, urgent tones. "Are you sure this is it?" a deep voice asked. "The GPS shows the car's signal stopped in this exact area 3 weeks ago," replied another voice. "More refined, but equally dangerous. If old Richard hid something here, we need to find it before anyone else does." Sofia felt a shiver of terror run down her spine. They were specifically looking for her grandfather's Bentley, and from the tone of their voices, they weren't people who would hesitate to hurt her if they found her. She shrank further into the seat, silently praying that the car's natural camouflage among the trees would be enough to hide her. Sofia heard the men getting closer, and through the fogged-up windshield she could see two shadowy figures wearing expensive suits, moving with professional precision. They had electronic equipment in their hands, probably metal detectors or GPS trackers, and were systematically searching the area around the Bentley. "Boss will be furious if we come back empty-handed again," one of them muttered. "It's been 3 weeks since Richard Martinez disappeared, and we still haven't found him or his documents." Sofia realized with growing horror that these men had likely captured or killed her grandfather and were now searching for the evidence he had hidden. She clutched the briefcase tightly, understanding that she was holding in her hands not only her inheritance, but also the evidence that could put her parents' killers behind bars. Sofia knew that if these men found her, she wouldn't leave those woods alive. She had become the ultimate threat to the people who had already killed her entire family to protect their secrets. Sofia hid in the Bentley for nearly an hour after the men in suits finally gave up and left, her heart still pounding as she processed the gravity of her situation. She wasn't just an orphan who had discovered an inheritance. She was a living witness to a crime, the only person in the world with access to evidence that could destroy very powerful and dangerous people. Sofia looked at the briefcase in her hands, realizing that those documents weren't just papers. They were a death sentence for whoever possessed them. But at the same time, they were also the only chance to seek justice for her parents, for her grandfather, and for all the years of loneliness she had lived based on lies. Sofia took a deep breath and made the bravest decision of her life. She wouldn't run, she would fight. As she carefully made her way back to the orphanage, avoiding the main trails and staying hidden among the trees, Sofia began to formulate a plan. She knew she couldn't trust anyone in Albany. If those men had found the Bentley, it meant they had resources and information she couldn't underestimate. Her only option was to go to New York, find Marcus Thompson, and trust that the plan her grandfather had developed over 8 years would be enough to protect her and expose the truth. Sofia knew it was a near impossible mission for a 14-year-old girl who had never left her hometown. But she also knew she had Harrison blood running through her veins. People who built empires and didn't back down from challenges. When Sofia finally arrived at the orphanage, she looked at the familiar building with completely different eyes. Those peeling walls were no longer her prison. They were the place that had protected and prepared her for this moment. Sister Margaret wasn't just a kindly nun. She was a guardian who had cared for her under her grandfather's instructions. The other children weren't just companions in misfortune. They were brothers and sisters she would leave behind to reclaim her destiny. Sofia went upstairs to her dormitory, hid her suitcase under her bed, and began planning her escape. She knew she had only one chance to do it right, and that if she failed, not only would she die, but the truth about her parents' murder would be buried forever. That night, while the other girls slept, Sofia lay awake, staring out the window toward the forest, where her life had changed forever, knowing that soon she would leave the safety of childhood behind and enter a world of danger, power, and responsibility she could barely imagine. Sofia stayed up all night, planning every detail of her escape from the orphanage with the precision of a military operation. She knew she had only one chance to get it right. If she was caught trying to escape, or worse, if the men in suits discovered her whereabouts, all would be lost. Sofia grabbed an old notebook and began writing a detailed schedule. She would leave early Saturday morning, when Sister Margaret was sleeping soundly and the orphanage was quieter. She would take only the essentials, a few clothes, the briefcase with her documents, the money her grandfather had left, and her prepaid phone. Sofia calculated she would need at least a 6-hour head start before anyone noticed her absence. enough time to reach the Albany bus station and catch the first bus to New York. The biggest challenge would be getting out of the orphanage undetected by the basic security systems Sister Margaret had installed after some older children tried to escape the previous year. Sofia knew every inch of the building after 8 years of living there, and she knew that the second-floor bathroom window had a broken lock that had never been fixed. She could climb down the tree growing right next to the window, the same tree she used to look out over the forbidden forest on her loneliest days. Sofia discreetly tested the route during the day, pretending to clean the windows, and confirmed that she could climb down quietly. She also located where Sister Margaret kept the key to the main gate in case she needed an alternative escape route. Sofia knew she couldn't just disappear without some explanation. Sister Margaret had been too good to her over the years, and she deserved at least a goodbye, even if she couldn't know the whole truth. Sofia wrote a careful letter, explaining that she had discovered information about her family and needed to go to New York to investigate, but without mentioning the details of the inheritance or the dangers she was facing. "Please don't worry about me, Sister Margaret. I know this sounds crazy, but I finally found clues to who I really am, and I need to follow that path. You always said I had a special destiny, and now I know you were right. I'll come back when I can explain everything, and I promise I'll be safe." Sofia folded the letter and tucked it under her pillow, where it would be found only after she was long gone. She looked around the dormitory one last time, memorizing the faces of the girls who had been her sisters for so many years, knowing that when she returned, if she returned, she would be a completely different person. On Friday afternoon, just hours before Sofia was to execute her escape plan, a dapper man in a gray suit appeared at the door of St. Mary's orphanage, causing a stir among the children who rarely saw such well-dressed visitors. Sofia was helping in the kitchen when she overheard Sister Margaret talking to the stranger in the reception room, and something about the urgent tone of the conversation made her stomach churn with anxiety. She crept discreetly to the door, pretending to be cleaning the hallway, and caught fragments of the conversation that made her blood run cold. "I'm looking for a specific girl," the man said in a soft but authoritative voice. "Sofia Martinez. I have important information about her family that she needs to know." Sofia felt her legs grow weak. How did this man know her real name? Only her grandfather and Marcus Thompson should know her true identity. Sofia watched the man through the crack in the door and noticed details that made her even more nervous. He was impeccably dressed, with an expensive watch on his wrist and shoes that shone like mirrors, but there was something in his eyes that clashed with his polite smile. He held a leather briefcase similar to the one she had found in the Bentley, and as he moved, Sofia noticed a suspicious bulge under his jacket, probably a gun. "I'm sorry, sir," Sister Margaret replied in her usual firm voice, "but we don't have any child by that name here. Perhaps you're looking in the wrong place." Sofia felt a surge of gratitude for the nun who had protected her for so many years. Even though she didn't fully understand from what, the man persisted, showing a photograph that Sofia couldn't see clearly, but Sister Margaret stood her ground with the determination of someone accustomed to protecting vulnerable children. After the man finally left, clearly frustrated but trying to maintain his composure, Sofia realized her time was up. If those men had discovered her location and her real name, it meant she was no longer safe at the orphanage. She needed to leave that very night. She couldn't wait until Saturday as she had planned. Sofia ran to her dorm, grabbed her suitcase from under her bed, and began gathering her few possessions with hands shaking with pure adrenaline. She looked out the window and saw the man in the gray suit standing across the street, clearly watching the orphanage and waiting for some sign that she was there. Sofia realized she was in a race against time. She needed to escape before the man decided to return with reinforcements, or worse, before he figured out a way to enter the orphanage at night. The orphan girl who woke up that morning was no more. She was now Sofia Elena Martinez Harrison, billionaire heiress on the run, and her survival depended on getting to New York before her enemies discovered she had found the secrets they had killed to hide. Sofia waited until 2 in the morning, when she was sure the entire orphanage was fast asleep, before putting her desperate plan into action. She dressed in her darkest clothes, tied her hair in a tight ponytail, and grabbed her suitcase along with a small backpack containing only the essentials. Her heart was pounding so hard she was afraid to wake the other girls in the dormitory, but they continued to sleep peacefully, oblivious to the drama unfolding beside them. Sofia left the goodbye letter under her pillow and took one last look at the room that had been her home for 8 years, committing every detail to memory before walking silently toward the second-floor bathroom. She She knew there was no going back. Once she climbed out the window, she would be completely on her own, in a world that wanted her dead. The descent down the tree was scarier in the dark than Sofia had imagined, especially carrying the heavy suitcase. But her determination overcame her fear. She climbed down branch by branch, testing each hold before putting her weight down, silently praying that no branch would break and wake the entire orphanage. When she finally touched the ground, Sofia hid behind the tree for a few minutes, observing the shadows around the building and looking for signs of the man in the gray suit or other guards. The orphanage was silent and seemingly deserted, but Sofia didn't allow herself to relax. She knew dangerous people were experts at hiding in the shadows. She ran crouched to the back gate, using the key she had discreetly taken from Sister Margaret's office, and within seconds, she was outside the walls that had protected her for so long. The streets of Albany were deserted and eerily quiet at 2:30 in the morning, with only a few streetlights creating yellow circles of safety in the darkness. Sofia walked quickly through the streets she had known since childhood, but now they seemed completely different. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every parked car could contain someone waiting for her. She kept her briefcase clutched to her chest and her head down, avoiding the main streets and using the shortcuts she had learned over the years. The bus station was a 40-minute walk from the orphanage, and Sofia knew she needed to get there before dawn, when the crowds would increase and she would be more visible. Each step took her further away from the only life she had known and closer to an uncertain destination. But Sofia kept walking with the determination of someone who had finally found a purpose greater than her own safety. After a 4-hour bus ride that felt like an eternity, Sofia finally arrived at New York's Port Authority at 8 in the morning, and the impact of the big city hit her like a tidal wave. She had never seen so many people in one place, thousands of hurried New Yorkers running in every direction, speaking dozens of different languages, creating an organized chaos that made Sofia feel like an ant lost in a giant anthill. The noise was deafening. Car horns, distant sirens, loud conversations, street music, and the smell was a strange mix of street food, car exhaust, and something she couldn't quite place, but that was definitely big city smell. Sofia clutched her suitcase tightly and tried not to look as lost as she felt, but it was impossible to hide that she was clearly a country girl on her first visit to the metropolis. Sofia stepped out of the bus station and found herself in the concrete and glass jungle that was Manhattan, with buildings so tall she had to crane her neck to see the tops. She had Marcus Thompson's address written down on a piece of paper, but she had no idea how to get to Park Avenue or even which direction to start walking. People passed her as if she were invisible, all absorbed in their own urgent lives, and Sofia realized that for the first time in her life she was truly alone in a world she didn't know. She stopped on a corner trying to understand the street numbering system, when a hot dog vendor shouted something at her in an accent she could barely understand. Sofia felt a wave of panic. How had she thought she would navigate a city of 8 million people when she could barely understand what anyone was saying? After nearly an hour of wandering the streets and asking directions from people who barely stopped to listen, Sofia finally found a kind woman working in a souvenir shop who was willing to help her. "Park Avenue is far from here, dear," the woman said with a motherly smile. "You'll need to take the subway. Are you sure you know where you're going?" Sofia lied and said yes, but the woman must have sensed her nervousness because she drew a simple map on a napkin, showing which subway line to take and where to get off. Sofia thanked her profusely and followed the instructions, descending into the subterranean world of the New York subway, with her heart pounding. She had never ridden a subway in her life, and the noisy, crowded tunnel system made her feel as if she were descending into another planet. But Sofia took a deep breath, bought a ticket with the money her grandfather had left, and boarded the train that would take her to her destination, and her destiny. When Sofia finally arrived at the Park Avenue address, she had to look at the paper 3 times to make sure she was in the right place. The Thompson, Williams and Associates building was a 40-story glass and steel tower that rose majestically among other equally impressive skyscrapers, its facade gleaming in the morning sun like a monument to power and wealth. The lobby was all white marble with gold accents, decorated with artwork that probably cost more than the orphanage's annual budget, and uniformed security guards seemed more intimidating than welcoming. Sofia felt completely out of place in her simple clothes and worn backpack, as if she were an intruder trying to enter a world clearly not made for people like her. She took a deep breath, reminded herself that technically she was richer than most people in the building, and walked toward the reception desk with all the confidence she could muster. The receptionist was an elegant, middle-aged woman, impeccably dressed and made up, who looked at Sofia with an expression that mixed surprise and barely concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" he asked in a tone that clearly suggested Sofia was in the wrong place. "I need to speak to Marcus Thompson," Sofia said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "It's urgent and personal." The receptionist laughed in a way that wasn't at all funny. "I'm sorry, dear, but Mr. Thompson is one of the most important lawyers in New York. He doesn't receive walk-ins, especially from—" She trailed off, clearly searching for a polite way to say poorly dressed children. Sofia felt her face heat with anger and humiliation, but forced herself to remain calm. She knew this was just the first of many hurdles she would have to overcome. Sofia tried to explain that she had important information about a case Marcus had been waiting years for, but the receptionist interrupted her with a condescending smile. "Look, honey, I'm sure you think you have something important to say, but Mr. Thompson is in meetings all day with very important clients. Perhaps you could leave a message, and someone will contact you if it's relevant." Sofia realized she wasn't going to get through to the receptionist with words, so she did something that surprised even herself. She took out the business card Marcus had left in his briefcase and placed it on the counter. "Tell him Sofia Elena Martinez Harrison is here, and that I have the briefcase Richard Martinez left for me." The change in the receptionist's expression was instantaneous and dramatic. Her eyes widened, her posture straightened, and she picked up the phone with hands that trembled slightly. Sofia realized she had just spoken words that held power in this world of glass and marble, words that would open doors that had seemed impossible to cross just seconds before. Within 5 minutes, Sofia heard the sound of hurried footsteps echoing through the marble lobby, and when she turned, she saw a man in his 60s walking quickly toward her with an expression of utter disbelief on his face. Marcus Thompson looked exactly how she had imagined an elite lawyer would look. Perfectly combed gray hair, a tailored suit that probably cost more than a car, and a presence that commanded instant respect. But what struck Sofia most were his eyes. They held the same intelligent intensity she had seen in photographs of her grandfather, and when he looked at her, she saw immediate recognition mixed with raw emotion. "My God," he whispered, stopping a few feet from her. "You look just like your mother. Richard always said you had Elena's eyes, but seeing him in person—" He shook his head, clearly struggling to control his emotions. Marcus approached Sofia carefully, as if she were made of glass and could shatter at any moment. "Sofia Elena Martinez Harrison." He said her full name like a prayer. "I've been waiting for this moment for 8 years. Your grandfather made me promise that when you showed up, and he was always certain you would, I would do everything in my power to protect you and help you reclaim what is rightfully yours." He glanced around the lobby, noticing that several people were watching the scene curiously, and his expression grew more serious. "But first, we need to get out of here. If you manage to reach me, it means the situation is more urgent than we imagined." Marcus gave a discreet signal to the security guards, who immediately positioned themselves to create a subtle barrier between Sofia and the rest of the lobby. Sofia showed Marcus the briefcase, and when he saw the initials RHM engraved on the leather, his eyes filled with tears. He fought back. "Richard was like a brother to me," he said, his voice breaking. "When he disappeared 3 weeks ago, I knew something terrible had happened, but I also knew he had prepared everything for this moment." Marcus gently took the briefcase from Sofia's hands and held it as if it were a sacred treasure. "This briefcase contains not only your inheritance, Sofia, but also the key to getting justice for your parents and your grandfather. Richard spent the last 8 years of his life gathering evidence, building a case, preparing everything for the day you were ready to fight." He looked directly into Sofia's green eyes, and she saw in them the same fierce determination she felt burning in her own chest. "Are you ready to uncover the whole truth, even if it's more terrible than you imagine?" Marcus took Sofia to his office on the 40th floor, a stunning room with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Manhattan. As they sat in leather chairs that cost more than most people earn in a year, he began to tell the full story that would forever change Sofia's understanding of her family. "Your parents didn't die in an ordinary accident, Sofia," Marcus began in a grave voice. "Robert and Elena discovered that 3 Harrison Industries executives, James Mitchell, the CFO, Sarah Chen, the COO, and David Rodriguez, the head of security, were embezzling millions of dollars from the company through phony contracts and offshore accounts." Marcus showed detailed documents proving the corruption scheme. explaining how the three executives had created shell companies to steal money that should have gone to social projects and educational programs. Your parents discovered everything and were about to expose them publicly when the accident happened. Sofia felt nauseous as Marcus explained the horrific details of how her parents were murdered. They sabotaged the brakes on your parents' car and hired a professional driver to force them off the road on a dangerous curve. It was planned to look like an accident, but your grandfather Richard never believed the official version. Marcus showed photographs of the accident scene, reports from private investigators, and forensic evidence proving it was premeditated murder. Richard spent his own fortune hiring the best detectives in the country, and over the course of 8 years, he managed to gather enough evidence to put all three killers in prison for life. Sofia wept as she saw the proof that her parents had died because they refused to allow thieves to steal money meant to help children like her. But the most horrific part of the story, Marcus continued, is that after killing their parents, Mitchell, Chen, and Rodriguez took control of Heiress Industries and continued their theft on an even larger scale. They turned a company their parents built to do good in the world into a money laundering machine. Marcus showed financial reports that proved how the three executives had embezzled more than $500 million over 8 years. Money that should have gone to children's hospitals, schools in underserved communities, and scholarship programs. They didn't just kill your parents, Sofia. They stole the future of thousands of children who should have been helped by Heiress Industries. Sofia realized that her fight wasn't just for personal justice, but for all the children who had been harmed by the greed of her parents' killers. Richard gathered enough evidence to not only put them in prison, but also to recover all the stolen money and restore Heiress Industries to what his parents always wanted it to be, a force for good in the world. Marcus opened an even thicker folder and showed Sofia documents that revealed the full extent of the conspiracy that had destroyed her family. Mitchell, Chen, and Rodriguez didn't act alone, Sofia. They had help from within the government, the police, and even the justice system. Marcus explained how the three executives had bribed the detective in charge of investigating the accident, paid the coroner to classify the deaths as accidental, and even corrupted the judge who should have overseen the administration of Sofia's estate. They created a web of corruption that stretched throughout New York's power structure, ensuring that no one questioned the official version of events. Sofia was shocked to discover that the conspiracy to steal her inheritance involved dozens of people in positions of authority, all receiving regular payments to keep quiet and protect the real killers. The most astonishing thing, Marcus continued, is how they managed to make you officially disappear. In the public record, Sofia Elena Martinez Harrison died in the same accident as her parents. Marcus showed fake death certificates, forged reports and documents proving how the conspirators had erased her legal existence to ensure she could never claim her inheritance. They paid clerks to alter records, bribed social workers not to investigate your whereabouts, and even infiltrated the orphanage system to ensure you were never found. Sofia realized that her entire life in the orphanage had been a carefully constructed lie. She wasn't just an abandoned orphan. She was a billionaire heiress who had been officially dead, so thieves could steal her fortune. Marcus explained that the conspiracy had become even more dangerous in recent years as Heiress Industries grew and profits soared. Mitchell took over as CEO, Chen controls all financial operations, and Rodriguez uses the company's security department as his private police force. They've turned Heiress Industries into a criminal empire, using the company's resources to eliminate anyone who threatens to expose their crimes. Sofia saw photos of others who had tried to investigate her parents' deaths, journalists who died in accidents, investigators who mysteriously disappeared, lawyers who were found dead under suspicious circumstances. Your grandfather Richard knew his life was in danger, but he kept investigating because he knew you were the only person in the world who could stop these criminals. Marcus looked directly at Sofia with an intensity that made her realize the magnitude of the responsibility she was inheriting. Now that Richard is gone, you are the only real threat to them, Sofia, but you are also the only person who can completely destroy them and restore justice. Marcus rose from his chair and walked to a side door in his office that Sofia hadn't noticed before. When he opened it, he revealed a private conference room where an elegant woman in her 70s sat, gazing nervously out the window. When the woman turned and saw Sofia, she clasped her hands to her chest, and her eyes instantly filled with tears. "My dear granddaughter," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I thought I'd never see you again." Sofia stood frozen for a moment, staring at the woman who had the same green eyes she saw in the mirror every day, the same brown hair that was now elegantly gray, and the same face shape she'd seen in photographs of her mother. "I'm Isabella Martinez," the woman said, approaching slowly as if Sofia were a miracle that could disappear at any moment. "I'm your mother Elena's mother, your maternal grandmother." Sofia felt her legs grow weak as she processed the impossible knowledge that she had a living grandmother, someone from her family who had survived the tragedy that destroyed her life. Isabella explained through tears how she had been forced to fake her own death 8 years ago, when she discovered that her children's killers also wanted to eliminate her to ensure no one would question the official version of events. "Richard and I worked together all these years, my dear. While he investigated the crimes and gathered evidence, I made sure you were safe at the orphanage." Isabella revealed that she had been the one who made the anonymous donations that kept St. Mary's running. She had asked Sister Margaret to take special care of Sofia. She had been the one who had watched from afar every important moment of her granddaughter's life. "I was at all your school performances, hidden in the back of the auditorium. I watched you grow into a brave and kind young woman, just like your mother." Sofia ran into her grandmother's arms, and for the first time in 8 years, she felt what it was like to have a real family. Isabella hugged her tightly, crying and whispering words of love that Sofia had dreamed of hearing her entire life. "You were never alone, my dear Sofia. Richard and I never stopped loving you, never stopped fighting for you." Isabella showed Sofia a photo album she had kept secret for all these years. Pictures of Sofia in the orphanage, at school, playing in the playground, growing up without knowing she was loved and protected from afar. "I wished so much that I could be with you, that I could comfort you when you cried, that I could celebrate your achievements. But I knew that if the killers found out I was alive, they would kill me, and then come after you." Sofia realized that her loneliness had been a sacrifice her family had made to keep her alive, and that the love she had always sought had been there all along, hidden but constant. Now, finally reunited with her grandmother, Sofia felt a new strength growing within her. She was no longer alone in the fight against her parents' killers. 3 months after the emotional reunion with her grandmother, Sofia sat in the presidential chair of Heiress Industries, in an office that had belonged to her parents, signing documents that officially placed her as CEO of the company at age 14, the youngest female CEO in American corporate history. Mitchell, Chen, and Rodriguez were in prison awaiting trial for murder, fraud, and dozens of other charges after evidence gathered by her grandfather Richard was presented to the FBI in a raid coordinated by Marcus Thompson. Sofia had recovered not only her $3 billion inheritance, but also the $500 million that had been stolen over the years, money she immediately allocated to expanding the social programs her parents had created. Her first decision as CEO was to create the Richard Martinez Foundation, named after the grandfather who sacrificed everything to protect her, dedicated specifically to helping orphaned and vulnerable children. Sofia transformed St. Mary's Orphanage into the first in a network of model institutions she planned to build across the country, equipped with cutting-edge technology, specialized teachers, and programs that prepared children not only to be adopted, but to become leaders in their communities. She hired Sister Margaret as the program's national director, earning a salary that allowed the nun to devote herself fully to caring for children without worrying about financial constraints. "You always knew I had a special destiny," Sofia told Sister Margaret on the day the new St. Mary's opened. "Now I know my destiny is to ensure that no child feels as alone as I did." Sofia also established a scholarship program that guaranteed a full college education for all orphans who wanted to study, and created an emergency fund for families in financial difficulty who were considering giving up their children for adoption. But Sofia's proudest achievement was the program she created in her parents' memory, the Robert and Elena Harrison Initiative for Social Justice, which used company resources to investigate corporate corruption and help families harmed by white-collar crime. Sofia knew her parents had died because they refused to allow criminals to steal money meant to help people in need, and she was determined to continue that fight. "Wealth without purpose is just numbers in a bank account," she said in her first interview as CEO. "My parents taught me, even in their deaths, that true power comes from using your resources to make a difference in other people's lives." Sofia now lived with her grandmother Isabella in the family's New York mansion, but she spent most of her time visiting orphanages, schools in underserved communities, and children's hospitals, always remembering where she came from and never forgetting that her fortune had a purpose greater than her own comfort. By age 14, Sofia Elena Martinez Harrison had become not only one of the richest people in America, but also one of the most determined to use her power to create a more just world, just as her parents would have wanted. Sofia's story teaches us that sometimes the greatest transformations in our lives begin when we feel most lost and alone. How many times have you felt like an emotional orphan, abandoned by circumstances, feeling worthless and without purpose in the world? Sofia discovered that her loneliness wasn't abandonment, it was protection. Her poverty wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Her years of struggle weren't wasted. They were training for the moment when she would need inner strength to face assassins and reclaim her destiny. Think about your own life for a moment. What abandoned cars have you been ignoring? What opportunities are hidden right under your nose, waiting for you to be brave enough to investigate? Sofia could have passed the Bentley 1,000 times and never stopped to look, just as you could be going through your own transformation every day without realizing it. The difference between people who change their lives and those who stay stuck in the same situations is simple. Courage to open doors that seem impossible to open. Sofia was 14 and faced billionaire assassins. What's your excuse for not facing the obstacles that are preventing you from living the life you deserve? The most powerful truth of Sofia's story is that she discovered she was never truly alone. There were people fighting for her even when she didn't know it. Maybe it's time for you to stop feeling abandoned by the world and start looking for signs that the universe is conspiring in your favor. How about leaving a comment telling us what the biggest lesson you learned from Sofia's journey was? And if this story touched your heart like it did mine, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because life-changing stories deserve to be shared with people who are ready for their own transformation.